Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are tackling a source of frustration that I think, well, just about everyone in the working world has felt at some point.
Oh, for sure.
You know the drill. Your company announces a massive new initiative. They spend, and we're talking literally billions of dollars globally here on culture transformation, leadership seminars.
All the incentive plans get changed.
Exactly, all to make everyone more innovative, more adaptive, faster.
The innovation boot camps, the trust falls, all of it. A very familiar story.
It is, and yet, 6 months later, nothing has really changed. People are still stuck in the same ruts, moving at the same glacial pace.
And leadership's first reaction is always to blame the mindset or the culture.
Right. Oh, our people just resist change. But the sources we're digging into today propose a totally different and honestly a pretty counterintuitive truth. They argue that the problem isn't the software running in people's heads, it's the hardware.
That is a great way to put it. The core thesis here is simple, but real profound. Structure trumps strategy.
Structure trumps strategy.
If you want to change behavior, you don't need a pep talk. You need a new architectural blueprint. The failure isn't a culture problem. It is an organizational design problem.
It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But before we get into the how, let's unpack what we actually mean by structure. Because when I hear that word, I immediately think of the org chart.
The pyramid, yeah. Who reports to whom?
But our sources say it's way, way more than that.
Right. If you just move boxes around on a PowerPoint slide, you haven't really changed anything. The sources define structure through three critical dimensions that, actually dictate your daily life.
Yeah.
First, authority distribution. This asks, who actually holds the right to make a decision?
So not who your manager is, but who can say yes.
Precisely. Who can say yes to spending money or launching a feature without asking for permission? Second is information architecture.
How data flows.
Exactly. Does information have to climb a ladder to get to a decision maker? Or is it available to the people, doing the work?
And the third.
Coordination mechanisms. How do we synchronize work? Is it through a manager telling everyone what to do? Or do teams just talk to each other peer to peer?
So the mission for this deep dive is to explore why rewiring these three things, authority, information, and coordination, drives adaptation better than any culture seminar ever could.
And we got some incredible evidence to back this up.
From Netflix to tomato processing plants, of all things. But let's start with the villain of the story, the pyramid.
The industrial legacy.
Well, right. Why are we still so obsessed with pyramids?
Well, if we look back to the industrial era, the pyramid made perfect sense. It was optimized for standardization and stability.
One factory, one widget, a million times.
A million times.
Yeah.
In that world, the people at the top genuinely had the best information. They could see the whole picture, so it made sense for them to make the decisions and send orders down the chain.
But we aren't exactly building Model Ts anymore. The environment has changed, but the shape of our companies, it really hasn't.
No, and that is where the mismatch is. In today's environment, things just move too fast.
Yeah.
The pyramid creates what researchers call decision latency.
Decision latency. It sounds like a medical condition for a company.
It pretty much is. It creates this organizational sluggishness. I mean, imagine you are a frontline employee and you spot a market opportunity.
Okay.
In a pyramid, you have to write a proposal. The proposal goes to your boss, then their boss, maybe a committee.
And by the time the approval comes back down, if it comes back...
The opportunities go on. Weeks or months later. That's the bottleneck.
And it's not just speed, right? There's also the issue of what you could call the telephone game.
Exactly. This is the issue of information quality. As information travels up to the layers of management, context gets stripped away.
Right.
The raw reality of a product failure or, a customer complaint gets sanitized and summarized until it's just a green or red bullet point on a dashboard.
So the people at the top who have all the authority to decide, they actually have the worst information.
That is the terrifying truth of it.
Yes. And it explains so much about why some executive decisions feel completely disconnected from reality. But there's a human cost to this too, which our sources mention. Psychological safety.
Yeah, in a rigid hierarchy, proposing an unconventional idea it's risky. If your idea has to survive 5 layers of management approvals, the likelihood of it being killed is high.
And the risk to your reputation is real.
Absolutely. So people just stop asking. They stop innovating. Not because they don't want to, but because the structure itself punishes it.
Okay, so we have decision bottlenecks, bad information, and fearful employees. The solution, according to our research, starts with flattening the hierarchy.
But not just by firing middle managers.
Right, there's more to it.
This is where it gets really interesting. It is about a concept called radical span expansion.
Radical span expansion, that sounds intense.
It is. The traditional logic is that a manager should have maybe, 5 to 7 direct reports so they can supervise them closely?
That's a standard.
But the logic here flips that entirely. If you give a manager 20 or even more direct reports, what happens?
Well, they definitely can't micromanage everyone. There aren't enough hours in the day.
Exactly. They physically cannot be involved in every decision. They are forced to delegate. They have to trust their team to make the call because they simply don't have the bandwidth to second-guess them.
So you create autonomy by design, just by overwhelming the manager's ability to meddle. That is brilliant. And we have a pretty famous example of this, Netflix.
Netflix is a prime example. They have maintained an incredibly flat structure. I think it's typically only about 4 or 5 levels between an entry-level employee and the CEO.
Which is wild for a company of that size.
It is, and it allows for incredible speed. Product and marketing teams at Netflix can launch features or campaigns without needing some huge executive sign-off.
This is how they were able to pivot globally to 190 countries and launch ad tiers so quickly.
Absolutely. If they had to run every one of those decisions up a traditional chain, they'd still be mailing DVDs.
Now, Netflix is cool, but the example that really blew my mind was Hair. This is a massive Chinese appliance giant, right? And they basically just blew up the corporation.
They did. The CEO, Zhang Rumen, he dissolved the corporate hierarchy. He replaced it with thousands of what they call micro-enterprise.
The micro-enterprise?
Small teams, maybe 10 to 15 people, that act like their own separate small businesses.
So they aren't departments in the traditional sense?
No. They have end-to-end responsibility. They do their own hiring, manage their own budget, set their own strategy. They even contract with each other.
Wait, they contract with each other?
Yes. If a manufacturing micro-enterprise thinks the internal design team is too expensive, they can hire an outside firm.
That is radical. It's like a free market inside the company. It sounds almost cutthroat, though.
It is, but it works because it forces alignment with the actual market. In a traditional company, you get your budget from headquarters whether you delivered value or not. At Hair, if a microenterprise fails to get customers internal or external, they dissolve. The employees have to find new roles, or they have to leave. It brings the reality of the market right to everyone's desk.
You can't hide behind the corporate shield.
Exactly. It gives them the scale of a giant corporation, but the speed of a startup.
Okay, so that's flattening the pyramid. But there's another layer to this solution, which is modularity. Moving from functional departments to something else.
Right. The traditional functional model, all the marketers sit here, all the engineers sit there, it creates silos.
Marketing throws a plan over the wall to engineering, who then throws a product to sales.
Exactly. It's slow and it creates conflict. Modularity creates units that own a whole customer journey from start to finish.
And the classic case study here has to be Spotify.
Yes. The famous squads, tribes, and chapters model. A squad is a small, cross-functional team that owns a specific feature, end-to-end, let's say the Discover Weekly playlist.
So they don't ask for permission to change the algorithm.
They just do it. They coordinate peer-to-peer with other squads.
But wait, if everyone is just running around in squads, how do you maintain standards? How do the engineers stay up to date on best practices?
That's the risk, and it's where the chapter comes in. It's a concept of dual affiliation.
Dual affiliation.
You belong to a squad for your daily work. That's where you deliver value. But you also belong to a chapter, say the Android chapter, for your skill development and for setting standards.
I see. So it balances that autonomy with alignment.
It does. It solves the cowboy coding problem where everyone just does whatever they want.
But I want to pause on something the research highlights here. There's fake empowerment, and then there's real empowerment.
This is such a crucial distinction. So many companies say, we're empowering you.
Yeah.
But they leave all the old approval structures in place.
Right.
Real structural change only works if you formally transfer through the authority.
And we see this in healthcare with a Dutch provider called Buurtzorg.
Buurtzorg is fascinating. They have thousands of nurses and zero middle management. The nurses work in these self-managing teams of 10 to 12.
So who does the scheduling? Who buys the bandages?
The nurses do. They handle patient intake, scheduling, budgets, equipment buying, everything.
But isn't that inefficient? I mean, you're paying a skilled nurse a good salary. Do you really want them spending hours doing spreadsheets?
That is the standard efficiency argument, and it's why most hospitals have layers of administrators. But Bert's org looked at the total cost.
The outcome.
Yes. Because the nurses have full authority, they solve problems instantly. If a patient needs a specific type of bed to prevent sores, the nurse just orders it.
They don't have to fill out a requisition form in triplicate and wait for a month.
No. In a traditional system, an administrator might deny that request to save, say, $500. Then the patient gets a bed sore, goes to the hospital, and costs the system $20,000.
By giving the nurse the authority, the total cost of care goes down and patient satisfaction goes up.
That's it. You save money on the outcome, not the input.
And then there's a tomato factory. I love this one. Morningstar.
The factory with no bosses.
Literally no bosses.
No. Instead of job descriptions handed down from HR, employees negotiate what they call colleague letters of understanding with each other. They define their roles and accountability peer-to-peer.
Okay, but get this part. Workers can authorize capital expenditures. They can buy expensive equipment without a manager's sign-off.
They can.
They can just buy a new machine. What stops someone from buying a jacuzzi for the break room?
The process itself. You can buy the machine, but you have to build the business case first. You have to consult with the colleagues who will use it and the colleagues who manage the finances.
So it's not anarchy.
It's not anarchy, it's peer pressure. You have to convince your peers that it's a good investment. It turns everyone into a business owner.
But here's the catch, and this leads us to the next big pillar. You can't just tell people you're the boss if they don't know what's going on.
Exactly. Distributed authority completely fails without distributed information.
This is the oxygen of autonomy.
It is. You cannot let people decide if they are blind. In a traditional hierarchy, information is hoarded. It's power. In a distributed structure, it has to be universal.
Let's talk about Valve, the gaming company. They don't assign tasks, right?
No managers assigning work. Employees see all the data, the financials, user metrics, project status, and they choose which project to work on.
Based on where they think they can add the most value.
Right, and this bossless structure only works because of that open access to data. If they didn't know which games were profitable or which features users hated, they couldn't make those choices.
And then there's Bridgewater, the hedge fund, which takes this to an extreme with radical transparency.
They record every meeting. Everyone can see the logic behind decisions. This supports what they call believability-weighted decision-making.
It's not about democracy. It's about meritocracy based on data.
That's the idea. If you hide the messy reality of the business from your employees, you cannot expect them to make smart business decisions.
So we've fixed authority and we've opened up the books. But what about the outside world? The research points out that if you're rigid on the inside, you're going to be terrible at working with partners.
This is the ecosystem argument. If your internal structure is a maze of approvals, you become a bottleneck for your partners. Just look at Zara.
The fashion retailer, they're unbelievably fast.
2 weeks from design to retail. One of the reasons is that their design teams talk directly to suppliers and manufacturers.
There's no procurement department in the middle.
No procurement middlemen slowing things down. The suppliers can even see real-time sales data. They know what's selling, so they can adjust production instantly.
If Zara had to go through a traditional purchasing approval chain, fast fashion just wouldn't exist.
It wouldn't. It effectively blurs the line between us and them. And Toyota does something similar with resident engineers.
Oh, right.
They have supplier staff working on-site side by side with Toyota engineers. It creates a peer-to-peer connection that transforms the relationship from a transactional buyer-seller dynamic into a seamless ecosystem.
So we've got the blueprint. Flatten the hierarchy, create modular teams, give them real authority and data, and open up the borders. But how do you actually do this?
That is the skill gap, isn't it?
Yeah, because most leaders I know are trained in finance or strategy, not organizational design.
Exactly. Most leaders think of structure as something you set once and forget. Or they think, hey, Spotify's model looks cool, let's just copy that.
The famous Spotify model, copy-paste, I've seen this happen. A bank renames its departments tribes and buys everyone a hoodie, but nothing actually changes.
Which is so dangerous. Our sources use the example of ING Bank. They adopted agile squads, but they didn't just copy the visual layout. They focused on the principles.
End-to-end accountability, transparent metrics.
Right, and they adapted them to the realities of banking regulations. If you just rename your departments but keep the old approval layers, you've accomplished nothing.
It's like putting a racing stripe on a minivan. It doesn't make it faster.
Perfect analogy. And the other key to execution is dynamic restructuring. Structure shouldn't be static. It needs to be fluid. Remember hair.
The micro-enterprises.
Their micro-enterprises live and die by market performance. If they fail, they dissolve. The organization is constantly reorganizing itself.
It's not a traumatic, once-a-decade event called the reorg.
No, it's a constant, normal process of evolution.
That is such a mindset shift. We usually treat reorganization like surgery, painful, invasive, something to be avoided. They treat it like exercise.
And that connects right back to the core message. We need to stop viewing structure as just a reporting chart. It is the operating system of human behavior in your company.
And if the operating system is outdated, no amount of new apps or culture initiatives will make it run faster.
That's it.
So let's wrap this up. We started with the frustration of failed transformations. We learned that people follow structure, not just strategy.
To get speed and innovation, we have to redesign authority, information flow, and coordination. We have to move away from the industrial pyramid that was designed for a world that, frankly, no longer exists.
So here's the call to action for you, the listener. Stop blaming culture or mindset when things get stuck. Stop sending people to innovation seminars if you're just going to send them back to a cage of red tape. Look at the architecture. Where are the approval bottlenecks? Who has the information but not the power?
And ask yourself, are we just empowering people with words, or are we structurally transferring authority? Are we letting them buy the machine, or just letting them suggest it?
I want to leave you with this final thought. It's a bit of a provocation. If you changed your organization structure tomorrow, if you truly gave teams full budget authority, access to all the data, and removed the layers of supervision, would your culture problem disappear overnight?
The evidence we've seen suggests it just might.
Something to think about. Thanks for diving in with us.
A pleasure.